Hello and welcome back to Bread Coding, the channel where we earn our bread by coding. In this tutorial, I'm going to be showing you how to fix the grounding problem that we had in the other tutorial, so you can jump all the time, and also make the character crouch. We're also going to be not allowing the character to run while crouching or jump, and that is about it for this one. So I'll show you how to do it. Alright, so first off, I'll show you the small changes I've done. So the first thing I've done is actually fix the grounding issue that we had in the last tutorial. So the way to do that is I just went into fixed update, and when the player's grounded, you actually have to apply some bit of force to the Y. This actually fixes the grounding issue with the character controller. So I just added a variable. I called it stick to ground force, and then just subtracted that from the Y value of the current velocity every frame. Now, this I just set to 20. You just have to set it to a high value, and then it pretty much works that way. Next, the next thing I've done is I've actually went into the update move vector, and I noticed that we weren't really normalizing the movement, which we do have to do, since if we don't actually normalize this vector, the velocity will be higher when you go diagonally than it is when you just walk normally. So yeah, you also have to add that. Now, next thing I noticed on the camera handler, on late update, we weren't really clamping the Y of the mouse. So as you can see right now, let me just quickly show you. Right now when we move the mouse up, I can't move it more than this, and down I can't move it more than this. So we weren't really doing this last time. The way to do this is pretty simple. I just added this function here called the clamp rotation, and if the angle is bigger than 360, just set it to minus equals 360. This just solves errors pretty much with the angles, and then you just clamp it between a minimum and a maximum. This is just the function that makes the value not go below minimum and not go above maximum. And I use a vector 2 I called mouse Y clamp, and I just use that as minimum and maximum. Now vector 2 is here, mouse Y clamp, and I set it to minus 80 and 80. These are angles, so 80 degrees down and 80 degrees up, and those are going to be our clamps. Now, next thing, let's get into the crouching. Now, crouching is a bit more complex, so let's start from the update method in here. Now, I added this update method to the character mode, and in here there's quite a bit of stuff happening. So let's just see what's happening. So first off, we have this input.isCrouched, which if we go to the definition, I've actually added a boolean for crouching, and in the update in the input manager, we set it, we toggle it. So if we press the key down, the C key, we toggle the isCrouched. So if it's true, it goes false, and if it's false, it goes true. Now I also added this. So if you're not crouched, then you can jump and run. But if you're crouched, it's not going to allow you. It doesn't necessarily need to be added, but it's better in this case. Now let's go back here, and let's skip this for a second. I'll explain that a little later. We have this here, which is basically what we do when we're crouched, which is every time we just set the height and the center for the character controller. So it's this capsule thing, this one, the green part. And what we set is this radius, as you can see, and the height. Now let me just quickly show you what exactly happens when you're crouched. So go into the game, we press C, and as you can see, the actual height and the center change, right? We press it again, see the values that are changed again. So let's go back. As you can see, it's basically just a lerp from the current height to a goal height, which when you're crouched is basically this value, this normal controller value dot x times crouch height multiplier. Now let me just show you what that is. Normal controller values is just a vector 2, and in awake we set the x to the controller height, so this is the height when you're standing, and the y we just set it to the center dot y, which we use down here as well. And then the crouch height multiplier is simply a float with a number, and you can just use that to make the capsule lower, go down more or less, however you want. And then if we're not crouching, we simply use the standing value for both of them, and just like that. And in here we just lerp from the height, the goal height, from the center to the goal center. Now I just make it a vector with this, because here we're just using the y value. And now onto the more interesting stuff. This interpolated value comes from updating what I called a lerper, right? So we have this lerper variable here, private lerper, crouch lerp. Now what this is simply this script, lerper. It's just a serialized class, and it has a duration variable. And, well, this one we can actually delete. Actually forgot. It has that duration variable, and what it does, every time you update it, so from here, let me just show you. So from here, every time you update it, it just adds an interpolated value, it clamps it, and it multiplies by delta time. So what this does is basically give you a value between 0 and 1, while taking into account the duration. That's why we divide 1f by duration. And that will always give us a value between 0 and 1, and it will be linear. So it will fix any kind of errors that a normal lerp with a time.delta time multiplied by speed would have. So we use that. Now we would have quite a couple of errors if we just use that without all the time, since it would constantly be changing between crouching and not crouching. So what we do is we have this in transition boolean, which is right here. It's false by default. And what we do is if we changed our crouching, so if this frame we toggle the crouch, so if you just press that frame, then we start a transition, we reset the crouch lerp, which this basically just sets the interpolated value to 0. And then we actually allow this to happen. We actually save the was crouching so we can compare with the last frame. That's what we do here. We compare the current one with the last frame. And if this one is different, then that means we toggled it. And in here, transition, as I already said, we just update the crouch lerp. So this will give us the correct interpolated value. And then in here, what we do is we check if it's done. So is done just checks if the interpolated value is bigger than or equal to 1. It's not really going to be bigger than 1, but it's better to have the bigger sign as well. And if it is, which means that the lerp is done, we reset it if needed, which we do. And yeah, that's how we do crouching here. And then you also need to crouch the camera, because the camera doesn't actually crouch with the character controller. So what you do is do pretty much the same thing. So as you can see, we have the crouch lerp here as well on the camera handler, and the crouch offset. And if we in here we don't actually store anything, because we can just go normally. We store the position though. We store the normal position of the camera, which is the local position. And in update, we handle crouching. This is called an update, by the way. And as you can see, this pretty much does the same thing. We actually have to combine both because they're really doing the same thing. But instead of doing the character controller values, it goes transform.local position, so the local position of the camera, and then it lerps it to the goal position, which if we're crouching is just the standing position minus an offset. This just makes it a vector. And if not, it's just the normal position. And that is about it, really. That's how crouching works, and those are the solutions. Now I'll also show you the values, but you can also get this from the GitHub thing. The crouch lerp is just 0.5 duration, pretty fast duration, and crouch height multiplier 0.6. The crouch speed I just set to 1, which by the way, I have this value, I forgot to tell you. In get speed, I just added a new line. So if you're crouched, then we just multiply by the crouch speed. So you can actually change the speed depending on if you're crouched. And that is just simply a value that I added here. I just set it to 1. And really that's about it. I'll show you this one. You can see the mouse Y clamp minus 80, and the crouch offset is 0.8, and the duration is 0.5. You should probably set the durations from this one and the other one to the same, since you really want them to be just as fast. And that's about it. So if you like this one, subscribe. I'll be uploading a new one next week, and make sure to check the GitHub page if you want to see the code better. And yeah, see you in the next one.